Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Jeff Foundation's virtual workshop series. My name is Danielle Edwards. I'm Jeff Foundation's Community Engagement Manager. We're going to just hold off here for a few seconds just to allow some more attendees to get on. So just bear with us. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining Jeff Foundation's virtual workshop series. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Danielle Edwards. I am Jeff Foundation's Community Engagement Manager and have been a part of the organization now for 5 years. While this isn't our traditional workshop series and being in person that I so wish we could do, this is a great opportunity for us to, again, promote and connect with you guys while we're in these times. Today, we are so excited to have Gerard Merrick from Astellas with us today, who is the Executive Medical Director, who will be speaking more about the company and their drug development pipeline right after this. Please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat during the presentation, and Gerard will be able to answer some of those after we finish. With that being said, I hope everyone enjoys the webinar, and thank you again for joining us. So I'll pass it over to you, Gerard, to begin.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the Jet Foundation for this opportunity to speak to you today. And I'm going to be talking about our medication that is in development, ASP0367, and give you an update on the program thus far. So just in terms of disclosures, ASP0367 was previously known as MA0211 and was developed by Mitochondria, which was acquired by Astellas back in 2017. ASP0367 is an investigational drug, and it's not available for use outside of clinical investigations. The safety and efficacy of this drug has not been established, and there's also no guarantee that this drug will receive regulatory approval or become commercially available for the uses being investigated. And this ASP0367 is also not authorized for sale in any jurisdiction. And now we've gotten that clear. Just go to the overview of what we'd like to talk about. And first, we'd like to say a little bit about mitochondria and how they are an important part of the muscle cell, and they make the energy that your cell needs to survive. And also, then we want to talk about AP0367, which is an oral investigational drug, which means it's a drug that you take by mouth. And it's a drug that may act inside the muscle cells to increase the mitochondria's ability to make energy for the cells. And we'll describe that a little bit more. And then we'll talk about the specific phase 1B clinical study that is opening soon at sites in the United States. So first, I'll just like to say a little bit about Astellas. Astellas was formed in 2005 from the merger of two different Japanese pharmaceutical companies that have been around since the late 19th century and the early 20th century, Yamanouchi and Fujisawa. Both are headquartered in Tokyo, Japan, and the headquarters for Astellas is obviously in Tokyo, with locations worldwide. And we have a growing expertise in a number of areas, discovery research. This includes muscle diseases and neuroscience, regenerative medicine, with a company conscious focus on different focus areas of approach. We take sort of a science-first approach, trying to really look at the best science and trying to empower the best talent to pursue that, and then developing at the best locations. Our development location happens to be in Northbrook, Illinois, which is one of the suburbs of Chicago. And we have a broad pipeline that in the past especially has been focused in areas oncology, urology, nephrology, and also immunology, where there are high unmet medical needs. In terms of some of the numbers, we're a top 25 global pharmaceutical company. Worldwide, we have more than 16,000 employees, with over 2,000 working in M&D. And revenue for Astellas is approximately $12 billion annually, and about 16% of our sales is then put back into, reinvested into research and development. So now I want to go to the focus of what we like to talk about, and specifically talking about mitochondria. Shown here in the figures is first, on the left side is a picture of muscle with different muscle fibrils. But within the muscles are organelles called mitochondria. And shown on the right side of this figure is a mitochondria. And the mitochondria are sort of small parts of your cells, they're an organelle, that have a very specific job to do. Essentially what they do is help turn the food that you eat into energy that your cells need to survive and also to be able to do work. There are special pathways that activate how active the mitochondria are, and how the mitochondria uses both sugars and fatty acids, which are sort of the building blocks which you get from your food, and it allows you to utilize this type of food to make energy. So one of the problems, obviously, as most of you are aware of for Duchenne, is that dystrophin is a protein inside your muscle cell that works with other proteins, keep your muscles strong and protect them from energy. And when your cells don't have dystrophin or have mutated dystrophin, your muscles get damaged by calcium leaking inside them. This also weakens the mitochondria. And what we're testing is whether or not that we can use our drug to hopefully have an effect on the damaged mitochondria that can't use fatty acids properly. So the idea is that if our drug is able to help you regulate the fatty acids better, you may not tire as quickly. And also the muscle might be able to repair injuries that occur, so that hopefully you won't feel as fatigued and get quite as sore. But these are the things that we're actually testing. And we don't know those things yet for sure. So 0367 is being investigated to determine whether it can turn on what's called a PPAR delta pathway. This PPAR delta pathway regulates mitochondria by turning on certain genes in the cell. And when this pathway is turned on, what happens is the mitochondria are using fatty acids more, and also more mitochondria are being used. So essentially, the energy that your body is the food that your body is taking in is converted to energy more effectively. And using more fatty acids for energy results in increased energy production. So what I'm going to be talking about then is a study that is to assess the safety, tolerability, and also some preliminary efficacy of ASP0367 in pediatric male participants with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And in clinicaltrials.gov, you can find this under NCT 04184882. We'll show that number at the end as well, 04184882. What I'm going to be talking about here then is a phase 1B clinical trial. We've already conducted a phase 1 trial in healthy adults. This trial is going to be a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. We'll also have an open-label portion at the end. The primary purpose is to evaluate the safety and tolerability of ASP0367. The study will also evaluate how the body processes the drug, and then also how the drug may affect function, which we'll be assessing by specific cycling test, an arm cycling test actually. Trial sites are currently now opening across the United States. We have our first site open now in Norfolk, Virginia. And to find a participating site near you, you can visit clinicaltrials.gov. And as I mentioned before, search NCT 04184882. There'll be a certain lag period in terms of from when the trials are accepted into the trial and when it indicates that is being so on the clinicaltrials.gov site. So here's a little schemata of our study. It's the essential study schedule. It starts out with a 4-week screening period in which a number of things are looked at, including bloods are drawn. We're looking for whether or not people qualify based on certain inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then if you're accepted into the study, you'll be essentially randomized into one of the two arms, either active ASP0367 or the placebo arm. So that's why it's called a placebo-controlled trial. And you'll be a little bit more likely to be randomized into the active drug arm than you will placebo. Because for every placebo-treated patients, we'll have 2 patients treated on ASP0367. Initially, there'll be a 2-week low-dose period and then followed by a 10-week high-dose period. Also in this 2-week low-dose period, at the end of the 2 weeks, there'll be some studies that will be done after in terms of after being fed a high-fat meal. That's the FDA has asked us to look at issues of food effect, essentially. So that will be part of this as well. And then after this 12-week period where you're on either the active drug or you're on this placebo, which is essentially like a sugar pill, more or less, then everyone will be moved to active ASP0367. Again, there'll be a 2-week low-dose period and a 10-week high-dose period. And then at the end of this 12-week period, there'll be a 4-week follow-up period. And all throughout, there are a number of visits, which we've actually tried to reduce to actual direct visits to as few as possible. But there's still about 50% of these visits shown here will be at the actual clinical site. The whole entire study will take roughly about 8 months to complete for any individual subject that's in the study. One of the things that we've done is instituting a number of measures to mitigate the risk due to the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. And so one of the major things that we've done is to institute home health care visits. And by instituting these home health care visits, we've reduced the number of visits to actual sites by about 50%. Unfortunately, there are some that we can't eliminate, but we'll be collecting both safety measures and pharmacodynamic measures at both a clinical site and in your home. For these visits, a nurse will visit your home to do the study test. And they've been specifically trained for the measures that are on this study. And they're also obviously very much alert and making sure that we minimize any risk to both you as well as to the nurse as well in terms of issues with respect to COVID-19. In addition, your study doctor at the beginning of the study will ask about your family's work and travel history to assess your recent or potential ongoing heightened risk or exposure to coronavirus. In addition, there's some eligibility criteria that have been added to exclude people who have signs and symptoms of coronavirus infection and people who had higher risk for exposure due to recent travel, certain types of especially high-risk work, or having been near people infected with coronavirus. So who can participate? As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of both inclusion and exclusion criteria. Some of the especially important inclusion criteria include boys ages 8 through 16, having a diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, taking a stable dose of corticosteroids, and any cardiac therapy that you may be on, and also having at least some trouble walking quickly. And we'll be assessing that by the 10-meter walk test. Essentially, what we're looking at in this study by using the arm cycling test is assessing people who are sort of late ambulatory or on non-ambulatory stage. But we want to make sure that you can move your arms up to at least the shoulder height. Some of the exclusion criteria including having acute illness recently or serious infection or mental health condition or behavioral problem or not being healthy enough for the study, having heart problems like an ejection fraction, meaning that your heart is not working well, or having what's called the long QT interval, where the excitability of your heart muscle is altered, or having high levels of cardiac troponin on lab tests that suggest that the muscle cells in your heart are not that particularly well. And then also, if you use certain drugs within the past 4 weeks because of certain drug-drug interactions, that can't be allowed. Or if you have kidney or liver problems, that's not allowed, especially if this is a relatively early study. Or if you're currently receiving an investigational drug or ever having taken exon skipping or gene therapy drug. For later studies with this development plan, we'll be relaxing this last criteria with respect to exon skipping or gene therapy drugs. But for this initial one, we do have these limitations. So then what happens at the study visits? There are a number of different types of tests. We'll look at your general health, which includes exams done by your study doctor at visits, blood and urine tests, and also the nurse for the home visits will be asking questions about your general health, as well as drawing blood or taking urine as well. And also, there'll be some heart tests, for example, the ECG, and sometimes a follow-up electrocardiogram. There'll be a baseline electrocardiogram in this study as well. Also, there'll be some breathing tests, pulmonary function tests. This is something that sites may waive in later visits if they feel it's medically appropriate. And then there'll also be tests of how you move your body. And this will include tests in the clinic, such as I mentioned earlier about this arm cycling test, the pull or performance of upper limb, and also a 2-minute walk test. Some tests at home, such as video test and also an activity monitor. We will also be looking how your body uses the drug as well, looking at blood and urine tests and how you feel and think with quality of life surveys, diaries, patient and parent interviews, a digit span memory test, and others as well. We'll also, for some of the sites, about half of them, we'll be looking at your muscle structure using a magnetic resonance spectroscopy study as well. But not all, this won't be used at all sites. So first, I just wanted to give you a little idea about the assisted 6-minute cycling test. And this test measures a person's endurance. And it's actually somewhat similar to the 6-minute walk test, in that what we're really sort of testing is your ability to perform work over a longer period of time. It's not just simply looking at strength, but it's really looking at endurance. And it's an outcome measure used for people with DMD who are likely to stop walking soon or already require a wheelchair. To do this test, the person cranks the handles of a tabletop mobile trainer for 6 minutes. The mobile trainer will give some assistance, so the handles are easier to turn. But this study will then count the number of times that the person cranks the handles with their arms over a period of 6 minutes. And so I just also wanted to say a little bit about the muscle magnetic spectroscopy, or MRS. And the MRS, it really is very much like magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, which I'm sure many of you have probably had at some point. And both of these kinds of tests uses magnets to take pictures inside of your body. So they don't require to take any radioactive drugs to look at things, but they're using magnets to actually being able to look inside your body, as I said. And it's a non-invasive imaging technology that's been used to study different organs such as the muscle or the brain. The person will lie down on a rolling table, which goes into the machine, and then during this period, you're asked to lie very still, and then the machine uses magnets, as I mentioned, to create the images. And in this study, the MRS will be obtaining images of the muscles in your legs. The amount of fat versus healthy muscle will be measured, which is called the fat fraction. This will allow us to understand how the disease progresses. And then we'll be using the MRS to see if ASP 0367 might slow down how fast or how quickly fat replaces muscle because of DMD. In terms of how can you learn more, you can visit www.clinicaltrials.gov, and you can search NCT 04184882 for more details about this study, and also to see a list of locations recruiting participants. Currently, we just had the first trial site be qualified to recruit. So they're probably not yet added on to the clinical site, clinicaltrials.gov yet. But sites will be added once they're ready to accept new participants. You can also email Astellas Pharma Global Development at astellas.registration@astellas.com, or you can call us at 800-888-7704. And so thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I'd certainly be happy to take any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gerard. That was a great presentation. I do think we have some questions coming through the chat now. And again, if you have any, please feel free to throw them in. Gerard, can you see that? Can you see the questions by chance, or do you need me to read them?
No. Do I need to hit the area? Oh, okay. Okay. So Edwards is asking, what ages are you taking? We're taking ages 8 through 16 for this study.
I have one that is, this will be difficult for our son, and I want to say that most are non-ambulatory. The arm strength is limited. I guess I'll just guess on that question, but I guess how much strength would one need? I guess basically, I know you talked a little bit being quickly to walk 10 meters or difficulty walking 10 meters, but I guess are you looking for some difficulty in the arm strength as well, or more strength?
Well, we're looking for enough arm strength so that you can raise your arms at least shoulder high. So that's one of the qualification parts in the screening part. So, we're looking for people who having some trouble walking, and or unfortunately are at the wheelchair stage right now to get around easily. But then we're looking for some arm function as well, so able to raise their arms at least to the shoulder height.
Okay. Another question there is, if the findings are good, do you see allowing this to be combined with other drugs, such as a cocktail combination?
Well, I mean, so we're sort of expecting most patients coming into the study to be on corticosteroids. So we would certainly imagine them staying on that. So what we sort of really do envision down the road certainly is that you know, there'll sort of be a layering on of effective medications to gain maximal function, which is very much what's seen in other areas, such as like hypertension, where or people with poor cardiac function, where you often need to have multiple medications to get optimal function, because generally one medication doesn't do enough all by itself. So we certainly would be imagining adding this medication on to the others. And frankly, there are benefits of things, you know, like corticosteroids, certainly, that you wouldn't want to, you know, drop the corticosteroid to come on to an experimental medication like this, certainly. So we sort of, that's why we're looking at this study in terms of add-on to sort of standard of care with corticosteroids.
Okay, great. Let's see. I guess another question, washout period for other patients that have participated in past clinical trials in Duchenne, their washout period, will you allow them to participate after that washout period? Would they meet that criteria?
Well, it depends upon the nature of what they were on before. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if they're on exon skipping treatment for this study, we won't be able to accept them. You know, down the road for hopefully for later studies that we hope to be doing, we'll be modifying some criteria for that. For like small molecules, we will have, you know, washout periods for a long enough period of time, you know, so that in general, what we sort of look at is like all drugs have certain what are called half-lives. So half the drug washes out over a given certain period of time. So we really require usually to go through at least 5 half-lives for those drugs, which usually something on the order of at least certainly at least a month, or to, you know, or a little bit longer would be necessary for most of them.
Another question we have, they're kind of trying to figure out what it's compared to, as it seems to be an in-between to preserve their muscles. I take Neo 21 and it improves Nix's oxid. I'm butchering that, sorry everyone. Is it similar, I guess? Can you see that question?
No, I don't. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Okay, I sort of understand.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so the basic issue for this. It's a small molecule that's really thought to be for symptomatic treatment, for helping the mitochondria work better. So it is sort of analogous to, like someone having problems with blood pressure, and you're sort of symptomatically treating the blood pressure problems. And here, when you're having trouble with, in terms of muscle function, and when your muscles feel sore and you're not able to have the kind of endurance you'd like to have, it's hopefully helping to improve that. We have certain hypotheses of how that is occurring, but the basic issue is that we're trying to sort of improve that symptomatic function. This is obviously not something that where we're trying to replace a gene of any manner, but we're trying to act downstream of what the genes do and actually improve the function of the mitochondria in the cells. I hope that answers the question that's being asked.
Can you see what about a nonsense drug like Astellas? What is that washout period?
Well, yeah, for something like Astellas, for that we would not be able to they wouldn't be able to be a participant in this study. Down the road in our future studies, we're going to be looking at modifying the criteria though. But this is sort of a more restrictive study in which we're trying to minimize the variance by different types of treatments that subjects have been on.
Someone else, the trial sites, I know you touched on that a little bit already.
Well, the first trial site that has been approved is one in Norfolk, Virginia. And we'll be adding on more sites then. We have another site that hopefully by around the middle of December will be coming on, a few be coming on hopefully around that time. The sites that are actually going to be doing the muscle imaging will be coming on slightly later than that, just because of some of the issues with getting all that going. It's a little bit more complicated than the sites where we don't have the muscle imaging occurring.
Are there animal studies that demonstrate that this drug helps Duchenne? Example, MDX mice or dogs?
Yes, there have been experiments in the MDX mice that do make it appear that does appear that it is improving endurance in those in the MDX mice, yeah, compared to wild type, yeah. So so those studies have been conducted, and then there also have been studies looking at the cell level in which it seems that there is improvement in cellular function as well. So we do have those kinds of what we call preclinical studies, which provide us hope as we do the translational work and move into boys with DMD. Yes.
Great. I think this is just another important thing, but kind of just to go over again, who is amenable to participating in this trial?
Well, for this one, it's going to be for boys of age 8 to 16. Down the road for later studies, I know there aren't as many girls with DMD, but there are some where I think we hope to include them as well. But for this study, it's just boys 8 through 16. And as we mentioned earlier, it's boys that are having some trouble walking and sort of in the late ambulatory period. And we'll have assessed that at the first, essentially at the first screening visit. And also it'll be boys that will have some trouble maybe with arm function potentially, but will at least be able to move their arms up to the shoulder level. So that's essentially what we're looking for at this time.
It's great. One person wrote, you should be applauded for starting with home care. It will help so many to participate. That's a good comment to take away.
Well, we realize the COVID crisis has been difficult for everyone. We were hoping to get this study started earlier, but then that's when the COVID crisis really came to have that first wave essentially, and it's taken some time to reconfigure the study appropriately, and hopefully we'll be able to get going early enough at places that are not having too many problems. I think everyone is feeling confident that we might not have to close down the country as we did earlier, but clearly we're going to all be needing to do things differently than what we had imagined before, and we're hoping that adding the home health care will help. We've eliminated about half the sites to the study sites. Unfortunately, we weren't able to eliminate more though. So yeah, well, thank you. And we hope it'll be easier to participate in the study at this time.
Absolutely. Another question we have real quick is, when you say trouble walking, can you define a little bit more of that?
Well, what we're saying is that in terms of the time for the 10-meter walk test, it will be over 10 seconds.
I guess they are allowed to use assistance of a wheelchair, but they will need to complete the 10-meter walk, correct? Without that distance? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, again, this was a fantastic presentation, and thank you so much. If there's any other questions anyone has, please feel free to just drop them through. All right. I think that might be all. So we can go ahead and begin to close here. Thank you so much, Gerard, for having this presentation with us today. I think a lot of people will walk away with a lot of new information and really benefit from this presentation. Again, to all the attendees joining, this webinar will be recorded and posted to our online library. So please feel free to watch it again or share with others in the community that you may know of who could benefit from it. And for any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Jeff Foundation or Gerard with the company information right there. We're happy to connect with you and talk more. But thank you so much again, Gerard.
Well, thank you very much for hosting this. We appreciate it very much.
No, absolutely.
And thank you for everybody listening as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, again. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you on another webinar very soon.